right, welcome to another episode of No Girls Allowed. I'm joined with three fantastic women in sports. I have Kayla Anderson, Jelnick, and Lauren Walsh, all three sports anchors in the Nashville area. Thank you for coming on with us today.
I'm excited, guys. We're back. The gang's back together, and we're full fuel ahead here.
Yes, I wanted to start. It's Tuesday, November 5th. I wanted to start with Monday Night Football. DeAndre Hopkins and his Remember the Titans celebration. He had 2 touchdowns. He looked good last night, ladies. Yeah, what was your reaction to him doing that celebration and then it being Remember the Titans?
I can't wait to get your guys' thoughts on this because my first immediate thought was, oh, he first of all, he nailed it, right? And I was like, he's paying respect to his old team. Right? He wouldn't have done that thinking it has no correlation to the Titans, his previous team. So I thought at first it was out of respect. And then I had a girlfriend texted me and say, did you see just what D-Hop did? Making fun of his former team. And I was like, wait a minute. What? I that wasn't my first reaction, but would D-Hop be capable of that? I don't know. From having covered him the last 2 years, I don't think so. I'm so curious what you guys think.
I honestly, this morning when it was brought up on the radio show that I do in the mornings here in Nashville, my initial reaction was, ooh, that's a little bit of trolling, I feel like, because when he went to Kansas City, I felt like he made a little bit of a comment of, now I'm, playing for a team that is actually
meaningful football.
Thank you, Lauren. So that's what I thought at first, you guys. And I had, oh my goodness, did I have listeners coming at me? Did I have D-Hop supporters coming at me? And then lo and behold, an hour later, D-Hop comes out with a tweet, retweets the celebration and said, this was in no way me trying to troll the Titans. This was me actually giving them and ran because they've been so good to me, like a ode to the Titans. So I guess when it was all said and done, it was all good fun and, and a tip of the cap.
So I had reposted that. I'll read the tweet. He wrote, it was a shout out to Tennessee. If you know me, you know it's nothing but love for Nashville. Ran and his crew are like family. Without them, I wouldn't be here. So maybe it's just the optimist in me. I saw it and thought, oh, he's paying homage to the Titans.
Thank you.
I didn't see it as trolling. I know there can be trolling in this league and with celebrations, and that can be fun, but I didn't view it as that. So I think D-Hop put that out just to clear the air, which is probably for the best. But from covering him in Tennessee, he has only had amazing things to say about the organization, the city, and the way he was starting to get involved philanthropically in Nashville. We all saw that as well. So I thought it was a nice little nod.
Absolutely.
There are other players. There are other players in that locker room and the rest of the NFL. There's players where you would know right away he is trolling his former team. That was, it didn't have that feel. It didn't seem like that was the case at all. I am glad he kind of cleared that up so he could just silence everybody else that tried to take that point of view, who has not covered him or been in the locker room with him or who has spoken to him after tough losses. And he still gives us the respect of giving his time to us to talk about the game and answer our questions. So I'm glad I'm not the only one that thought right away to give him that benefit of the doubt. I could also see why people thought he was trolling the Tennessee Titans.
I will say too, really quick on that note, I've been impressed. Oh, there's my dog. This is what you get on a podcast.
He's scared.
He's the least harmful animal you'll ever meet in your life if you saw this guy. But he has a mean bark. Maybe a little bit of what people think when they think of Derrick Henry and D-Hop. But we all know when you cover these guys and you meet them in person, they are really genuine people who do a lot for the Nashville community. I think that's why Titans fans, the majority that I see or that, you see on social media, they all are wishing D-Hop and Derrick Henry this season the best of luck, even though it's probably hard for them to lose key players like that. I know D-Hop was only here in a year and a half, but Derrick Henry here 8 seasons. And I kind of love that from the fan base, that they looked beyond just, oh, I don't want them to have success because they're not a Titan anymore. because those two in particular put so much out in the community and kind of took Nashville on as them, as their identity themselves. I think that's why you get a lot of people who are rooting for their success.
Yeah, it does hurt though when you see these guys leave the franchise and they're doing so well. I was like, oh, I'm like, DeAndre, not another touchdown. Oh my gosh. Or when we see Derek and he's just on track for another career year. And who else? AJ and even Danico. I was watching the Texans game and I'm like, oh God, I miss it. Like, it does hurt. I feel like fans probably are like, dang. But, anyways, the Titans got a win on Sunday. Yay.
I feel like we're Brian Callahan. Well, I mean, I'm excited that we got a win. Media corps.
Yeah, when you get your press conference room?
Yes.
It was.
Yeah.
And he got emotional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was kind of touching.
That stirred up a lot of track on social media. I cut that soundbite out because when I was in the press conference, that moment where Buck asked him, Coach, just how much did you need this one? I was far enough where I tried to capture it on my phone, and I remember saying, you know what? Don't worry about the phone right now. Go back, cut the nice video of it, repost it later, and sure enough, it blew up on my Twitter account. And I said, I did kind of word it in a way that I knew was going to get some traction. I said, the moment when Buck Rising made head coach Brian Callahan cry. And I hoped that caption would make people click on it and be like, oh, he's like breaking down crying. He wasn't breaking down crying. He didn't even, shed a tear. He got emotional. And that was such a humanizing moment. And we were all very, very quiet after that. It took a second for the next person to even answer the next question because we were overwhelmed, and I was overwhelmed. It was a really, really great moment where you got to see Callie as the human, Callie as the human, Callie as the person, and just the guy that's trying to do his job.
He definitely choked up, and you could tell just how much it's been weighing on him that they've not been able to get in that win column. And not only that, but I think because he has seen the work that the players have done behind the scenes that maybe on every Sunday is not paying off because of some of those mistakes. And they weren't able until Sunday to get over the adversity situation that continues to hit them throughout games. And I think all of that came together in that moment. And it was like, it really hit him as a human being first and foremost, because let's remember, we are human beings. We cover human beings. Just because they're athletes and coaches doesn't mean that they don't have emotions. Because I do know that some people were kind of like, oh, suck it up. Like, why is our coach crying? Give me a damn break. Like, I'm sorry, but like, we live in a real world here. And for him to have emotion, I had no problem with it at all, you guys, because that to me proves he's trying that hard to have this team come together. And it finally did. He had every right to get emotional at that, and at the fact that he talked about Tony Pollard and choked up a little, because I think he knows, Tony Pollard's, he's probably beat up, didn't practice all week, but went out there and continued to help this team win.
Yeah.
So,
you can say what you want about Callahan's decision-making in game, the play calling, but you can't say that he doesn't care immensely about not just the team and the results, but the players, the people. And I think we've seen that from covering him closely. And I also appreciate seeing emotion out of athletes, coaches, and people who are involved in such a difficult endeavor of winning NFL football games. You pour into it for an entire week. It's not baseball, hockey, basketball, where, okay, we're on a back-to-back, we're playing tomorrow night. This is just a different format where each win and loss feels that much heavier. And the day you're not bothered by a loss as a competitor, that's when you should stop doing it. And so I think that for Callahan, that doesn't necessarily have to show as rage after a loss, but maybe catharsis after a win, that he's relieved and overwhelmed emotionally, that they finally got over that hump at home and after a losing streak.
Yeah. So next up for the Titans, they have the Chargers in LA, the Vikings at home, and then the Texans in Houston, and then Washington on the road. How much do you all feel like this win against New England can kind of maybe string some more victories along? Because they kind of got a tough one coming up, a tough stretch here.
I think tough stretch is an understatement. If you ask me how many of the next, what did you just say, 4 games they're going to win?
Yeah.
I could see them being close games, but it's going to be really hard for them to get that other win. They need an X factor. They need to have that we talked a couple weeks ago that no, we're not seeing the veterans step up. And then DeAndre Hopkins got traded shortly after that. And even on Sunday's game, I think we definitely saw Tony Pollard really give everything he had. I would argue he was the one to step up big time in that game. I think for me, I'm still going back to the quarterback position. Mason Rudolph did enough to help the team win on Sunday. I don't know if he's going to be able to do enough to help the team win and lift them over the edge the next couple weeks. I'm very eager to hear what's going on with Levis and his shoulder injury. Coach Callahan did say after the game he's been progressing well and he's feeling a lot better. They just didn't want to push it. I think it's going to come down to, are they going to be able to get Levis back? And is Levis going to be able to be that X factor this team desperately needs him to be?
He needs to be, right? He's the quarterback. He's supposed to, he wears a C on his jersey. Let me remind you of that. He wears a C on his jersey, and yet he has not lived up to that, whether it be because of kind of digging himself in a hole early on this season, or this is not his fault, but the injuries have kept him off the field, therefore have kept him from progressing as a quarterback. And so you're right, Jill, there does need to be an X factor, and it does need to be him, because at some point, like the Titans continue to say, they're supporting him. They say that he's the starter as soon as he's healthy, but now we got to go out there and see, has he learned anything sitting back from a different perspective? You know, feeling like, okay, I feel what it is now to not be the starter. I'm seeing some things that maybe I didn't see when I was out on the field. I've rewired my brain a little bit. Who he did say in the locker room last week, guys, that he has sought some things to help with that. Whether that's a psychologist or whatever, I don't know. He didn't go into details, but he did say he has sought some help when it comes to that. So if that is the case and he plays Sunday, he's got to be that guy. And there's a lot of things he's got to live up to that Mason Rudolph didn't do anything crazy, but he is the guy that has got Calvin Ridley going in the last 2 games. He is the guy that, you know, is trusting of his offensive line and what his offensive line has done. By the way, from week 4 to 8, they've allowed the fewest sacks in the NFL. So something is working with the trust factor there. But then again, you're going to be without Lloyd Cushenberry, who's really been a gel to this offensive line. I'm worried about that, guys. No matter if it's, you know, Mason Rudolph or Levis in there, I worry about that moving forward just because the line was starting to gel. And then when you take that big piece out, that's a lot to ask of somebody like a Corey Levin to come in and just be productive like Lloyd was.
When you look at that upcoming stretch of games, we know Will Levis is going to be in there at some point because they've made it very clear when healthy, he's the guy. So with that, we know the ceiling is extremely high with Levis, but the floor is lower. So we need to see something from Levis that is going to distinguish where he falls in that spectrum. And Titans fans certainly hope that he can remind them how high his ceiling can be. And you look back at the debut last year, it was actually almost a year ago exactly, the October 29th game, the Oilers jerseys, throws 4 touchdowns, 3 to D-Hop. We know what that can look like, but we haven't seen it in a really long time. And we have not seen it consistently. So I think in terms of the upcoming stretch, we know we're going to see Levis, and it's just which version of Levis are we going to get? Where is he going to fall on the spectrum of his talent, of his ability to take care of the football, and the mental aspect too? Where is he mentally? Because he joked in the locker room, I'm never going to live down that rewiring my brain comment, I think, to your question, Kayla.
Yeah.
And if he can maybe look at it in more of a jovial and accepting way, paired with whatever type of help he's gotten, maybe psychologically, then maybe we see a renewed and refreshed Will Levis.
And I will say really quickly
Yeah.
about the confidence part of it. I do think you're onto something there, though, because I don't know, Jill and Lauren, if you got this from any players, but I did get the sense of when I asked about the adversity and finally overcoming that wherever it was in the game, that kind of gave them confidence of, oh my gosh, we can actually do this, because up to that point they weren't feeling like when adversity hit that they could overcome it. So I do think there is something to that. So when things do happen in a game, which they're always going to happen, right, they at least feel like they can overcome that.
Sometimes
I'm going to go back
you-
to, oh,
No, I was
sorry.
just gonna say, yeah. Sometimes you do have to see it to believe it when you've been on such a sour stretch too. So I think that could go a long way.
I was going to go back to your statement, Lauren, about Levis's the mental aspect of what he's going through, because I want to say it was Paul. Somebody kept asking him, was it Paul, about like, hey, are you going to go and get like a psychiatrist or maybe somebody to help you with the mental side of it? And he was like, no, like, I don't think so. So I am glad that he realizes that, yeah, I probably need to go and talk to somebody, because like we've talked about on this platform, I'm sure it's been very difficult for him over the last couple of weeks, because he was a constant meme at one point, and then you have this shoulder injury that has sidelined you, and the team has gotten 2 wins. And so I'm glad that he's going to talk to somebody, because like I said, that has to be rough for him mentally. And that's one of the biggest, I think, probably the biggest thing for him to get back is really the mental hurdle and not necessarily the physical, because we've seen the physical. So I feel like our conversation last week, it garnered a lot of feedback, great feedback about some of the things that women have to go through being sports reporters or just in sports in general. So I kind of wanted to piggyback off of that and maybe talk about some of the hardships of our job, because I think that people see us and we're beautiful, of course, and we get dressed up and we can speak on TV. And so that's all the glitz and glam. But I think to get to that point, I don't feel like a lot of people kind of realize what it takes to get to that point, and some of the hard, the really dark moments that we've had to go through in this industry. So I kind of just wanted to open up the floor, or should maybe I start? I don't know.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, when I did get fired, but when I got fired, it was in news. Unfortunately, it was my first job in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And they had me doing traffic 2 days out the week. What traffic is going on in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina at 5:00 in the morning? I don't know. But it wasn't good. And then I didn't get into sports until my next job, which was in Wichita Falls, Texas. And whew, boy, was my sports director a piece of work. And it's crazy because the sports girl before me, we would see her crying in the office and we would never really understand, or she really wouldn't talk about it. She has such a great personality that she kind of just let it roll off her back. But when I got in there, I said, oh, like, I mean, literally to the point where like clocking what time I got into work every day. You got here at 2:01, 2:02, 2:05. Like, I mean, it was just the level of micromanaging that I had to go through, the level of like the way that he would watch my stuff and not say good job, but just say, this is what you didn't do, or you didn't pronounce this right, or you didn't do this, blah, blah, blah. And that was, where I went and got the kinks out. But honestly, I thought about getting out because he was so tough. And I do feel like we see that honestly at every level that I've been at. You've had sports directors who are going to stay there. They're going to always be there. And you're the one that moves up. And so it just always felt like not the best situation for me. But that was probably like one of my hardest.
I love actually knowing that I wasn't the only one who felt like I went through a lot of tough times. Because in a lot of ways, you do feel isolated when you are going through those situations in whatever market you're in. And for me, when I got out of school and had to really work hard to even just get an internship, then to work into getting a job at one of the smallest markets in Bend, Oregon, I always just felt so isolated sometimes because I was like, I don't feel like I had anyone in my corner, because a lot of the times I had been in a market with no other females, and it was just me and a lot of guys that were there. And granted, there were some really great guys, and then there were some that, you know, looked at you as a threat. And I do remember in one of my markets in Tucson, Arizona, I went through a really difficult time there. It was really fun covering sports, and I worked with a lot of great people, but I did work with somebody who micromanaged me. And at that point, I was already 6 years into my career. I had been a sports director in Missoula, Montana, and I really felt like he ruined my confidence. I had gained all this confidence as a sports director. I came into my own. And then I got here, and I feel like I was hammered back down again, where I would get off the show on the weekends and I would have numerous emails from him tearing apart my sportscast. This is every single thing you did wrong. There was never any like, you did this right, you know. And some things I did learn from him when it came to some storytelling things, but overall I just felt like he kind of pushed me down instead of kind of using that constructive criticism and helping me rise. And it went so far, you guys, as to one time I was out shooting a state championship game for football, you all know, with the big old camera, and I got hit in the ankle as a guy was going to the sideline, and his helmet hit my ankle, and I didn't drop. I kept up with my camera and everything. And about 2 seconds later, I felt myself getting really dizzy and lightheaded, and the trainer actually had to sit me down. I about passed out. He took my boot off. I had a contusion the side of a softball. And I remember calling my sports director, and he literally did nothing. He said, "Oh, well, is there any way you can finish shooting the game?" And at that point, I just realized, like, this guy is not in my corner. He does not give a damn about my well-being. And I'm sitting here working my you-know-what off. And at that moment, I just felt really frustrated in this business. But like we all have, we overcame those situations. But these are real things that happen in our business. And it's not just once or twice. There's stories for everywhere that we've been, I feel like, in a market. But that was just one of my stories where I really felt like, you know, somebody could have really helped rise me up and continued to, you know, help build my career, and instead chose to kind of like silence me as a woman in sports.
I'll chime in because specifically based on what you two said, Kayla and Samaria, I had the inverse experience, which wasn't necessarily good either, in the sense that you had these sports directors, a lot of times older men who have their ways and kind of come down on you. Well, my first two jobs full time, and therefore almost 6 years in the business, I arrived at a station and was told, hey, the sports director's leaving, within weeks of me starting. At most, I had a month with who I thought I was going to work under. And I was alone for 9 months in my first station, a one-woman show for what ended up being a 3-person department that I led. And then I was alone for a year and a half before being promoted to sports director and leading a 2-person department at my next station. So instead of having someone who, albeit negatively, oversaw my work, I didn't have anybody at all. And this was first full-time job out of school to second full-time job, which are periods of such crucial growth. And I had to figure it out on my own. And it almost broke me, where I'm so type A perfectionist, as many of us are, not being able to cover everything like the other stations were and get to everything, and working a lot of 6-day weeks. I was spent. I was mentally and physically exhausted, and had to, as probably a 23-year-old, put some guardrails in place to last in the business and decide, what are the battles I'm going to fight? What are the things that are worth worrying about? And what are the things that I'm just going to have to worry about another time or look past in order to stay afloat? And that was extremely difficult. And at both stops, even upon leading a team, I had men who were not my boss, who were not in a senior position of any kind, critiquing what I was doing within the station and saying, that basically I should be doing sports like this, or the last guy did sports like this, so what are you doing kind of thing. And I had to fight a lot of battles where sometimes I would come home exhausted, not from a long day hours wise, but having to metaphorically go to war just to do my job and just to be looked at as capable of doing my job, which I knew that I was.
Right.
But just because I did it differently, it was at points a cause for friction and criticism. And I had to constantly be standing up for, well, this is the way I'm going to do sports. Here's why I did it this way, whether it justified an explanation or not. And so I really enjoy my position here in the sense that I'm the number 2 in the department. And that's what I sought out, because I was like, hey, I know I can lead and I'm good at it, but it's exhausting. Yeah. And I'm sure that's a good segue to one woman sports department, Jill Jelnick, where yes. I'm the number 2 here. And I just wanted a change of scenery because my first, like I said, 6 years in the business were grueling and demanding in a way that I don't think is the norm for most people starting off in the business. I had no one to really guide me unless, I sought out a mentor externally, which I would do. But it was just a totally different experience than pretty much everybody I know.
And hearing your contrasting experience to Kayla's, right? Those are just 2 examples of directions or paths. And I think the biggest thing that I try to tell young women, young men trying to get into this business is there's no right path. There's no right way to do it. The most important thing is getting that experience and learning, whether it is on your own with nobody above you, or whether it is with a sports director or some sort of a supervisor above you giving you positive or negative feedback. Unfortunately, it's just not a simple system. Our industry is great in the sense that there's a lot of paths you can take and a lot of opportunities in different markets and sports, but it is difficult in the sense that it's whereas most industries, the pathway to up is pretty simple. You're here, you get promoted, take a manager role, continue to climb the ladder, and my past experience is similar to both of yours in the sense, started as a lower market, worked my way up. I had a boss that was very, very difficult, that eventually when I had my aha moment, Kayla, where I realized he does not have my best interest in mind. And it actually was the competing stations sports directors that came to me in this market and said, hey, he does not have your back. Be careful of him. And they're talking about my own boss. And that was a big aha moment for me. And I realized I needed to get out of there quickly, or else I was going to I didn't want to give up. I did not want to give up. And I do think this is an important point. I convinced myself enough, or I talked to enough people in the industry where I heard, hey, not everyone's like that. Not every market's like that. Not every situation is like that. And so I really believed that I could gain more confidence, or I could succeed in another place. And luckily I was able to leave, got confidence in my next station, and continued to climb up, and have not reached out to that former sports director ever since. And I think you brought up my current situation, Lauren, and I think, I don't have to elaborate to a lot of young people getting in this industry how difficult it is being one person running a sports department in the market size of Nashville with the sports. I think the sports market of Nashville is much higher than 29 or whatever.
I agree.
Market is, right? And we're supposed to get a baseball team in a couple of years. I would love to be able, I had a conversation with a coworker. Hey, if we had a baseball team that started up in the spring and continued all the way to October, how would you cover everything? And I said, I wouldn't. Like, you just can't. And that was the lesson I learned in year one. You said it, Lauren. I wanted to compete with everyone, and I wanted to cover every sport and be at every press conference and have my same sports cast looked exactly like everybody else's. But I already was burning out in 3 months into the football season. And I was like, okay, if you continue down this path, Jill had a serious conversation with myself. Yep. You're not going to make it. You will not have any sort of work-life balance, and you're going to burn out and get out of this industry. And so each year, I've been in Nashville 3 years now. Each year, I've done a better job of picking and choosing my battles. And so trying to choose things that bring me joy and are fulfilling, and that help me continue to look at the perspective of, hey, I get to cover sports. And it's very easy to lose that perspective when you are carrying a camera, when you do have a 30-minute show to write, produce, edit, and anchor. It's very easy to overlook that. And so I would love to tell you there's a magic formula and a perfect solution. There's not. You just get better at it.
And that's why I was going to say, with the women who do this show in particular, that's why I think we all kind of get along and bond, and we all understand that we've all been through situations. We've all had to grow in this business. Nobody's been handed anything, right? And I think sometimes that makes you who you are, not only in this business, but as a person. All the crap that I've gone through, I look back at it and I'm like, you know what? I would literally not be myself, who I am today, have some kahunas about myself, if I didn't go through all that crap. And I think that's what we all, agree on too, is that no matter what our situation was, no matter how we got to where we are, and I know all of us still have places we want to go, we still have kind of been built the way that our journeys have gone. And so I just love that and appreciate about you guys too, is because we all kind of respect each other and what we've had to do to get to this point.
Yep, absolutely. That mutual respect, that you can't buy that. Yeah, that's earned.
I had said to someone recently too, this job of all jobs is not going to love you back. You have to love yourself and find love in what you do. And like Jill said, realize what is fulfilling for you about this job and amplify that and reframe how you're going to view the difficult times as, hey, that, I had to be a one-woman show for all this time, but it fortified my ability to do every part of this job and wear all the hats. And I see a lot of people leave this business with a tone of bitterness and almost anger. And I think it's like you want, like I said, the job to love you back and some kind of exchange of fulfillment. And it's just not going to happen with the hours we work, the holidays, the running around, the shooting of games. So I think it's so important to reframe that. And the people who last, I think, do find a way to do that.
Yeah. As someone who just got out, I think for me, I was just tired.
Yeah.
And that's valid too.
Because I felt like every job that I had, every station that I worked at, even though I was the number 2, I always felt like I was doing a lot of work.
Preach.
And I felt like I wasn't getting I wasn't getting anything for it. I wasn't even getting a good job. It's just like, hey, you got to do this, because if you don't do this, it's not going to get done. And that is so tiring, especially in where we are right now, post-pandemic, where a lot of stations are cutting back. And you're not getting to travel and you don't get to do things. And it seems like, I can only speak for the station that I was just at, but it seemed like sports was an afterthought, especially when you have situations where you're going back and forth with your news director about going live for Savannah Bananas over Vanderbilt baseball. And they're the 6th ranked team in the country hosting the regional tournament.
But Samaria, it's the Savannah Bananas.
National sensation. It's a national story, Samaria. Come on.
That could have been a news person, though. Let's all just say it how it is, right?
Well, and they sent a news person, and that news person was live in every single show.
And that's great for them.
And Vanderbilt had one live, and that was my 6 o'clock live that Friday.
Yeah.
Even though they were hosting the regional tournament as the 6th ranked team in the country.
And you know what, Samaria, when you told us that you were getting out, I knew you weren't getting out. You were changing direction.
Yeah.
But you are so good at what you do. And so when you told us your other path and your other show, like that was wonderful. And I think there's no one in this group right now that's not going to understand anyone who decides to leave the business. We have thought about it multiple times. We know it goes into it. So I always tell myself, we cannot judge anyone that says, you know what, I think I'd like to go a different direction. Or how about the people that get out of it entirely and go into a different field?
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, yes, that I hope you find what you're looking for, and what you weren't able to get fulfilled with before, because we're all going to understand.
But that's why I love doing this podcast, because that's what is great about the new age of sports and technology is, I don't know if, this fulfills you in a different way, but I'm going to tell you this right now. I'm on the radio, and this fulfills me in a way that I can't be fulfilled with on the radio, because I'm actually able to be my 100% authentic self, and I not feel like I can't say something, because of the region that I'm in or whatever it might be. Like, this is who I am through and through. And to be able to have these discussions and spill a little bit of like what you keep in so much in your, everyday job, like that in alone is fulfilling. It might be a little part of your every week, thing that you do, but it is nice to kind of have this sort of support and to just share things that may help other people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Ditto.
That was great. That was another good episode.
Good stuff.
Good stuff, guys.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
these are really good therapy sessions.
Seriously.
Because I like to do that too. I like to.
I know you are. You need to be like a psychologist, I think. Honestly. I could totally see you as a good psychologist. Sitting in that room right there, you got a couch, I'll sign up.
But I can't fit my face though. That's the problem. Like, I need to not be like,
Ah!
what?
You made a couple of those faces during my story about people like weighing in on criticizing my sportscast.
I can't.
You just wear a mask during it,
Because
right?
this is, I know, right? Well, you all drop down in the comments and you let us know what topic you want us to touch on next week. And thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe.